So the Great Leap Forward in 1949, and then the Cultural Revolution in China in the 1960s. Okay, when you change the culture, that's what Mao was doing in China, changing the culture. What does that mean? You change the way people think. And so people that don't think the way you want them to, what do you do with them? You can try and re-educate them, sending them to a labor camp or something like that. Or you can kill them. Okay? Because that removes their knowledge and their disagreement with your system. Okay? So, yeah, Hitler was very destructive, but there are others. Okay? Now, I think most of you probably know this. Hitler was not actually born in Germany. Okay? He was born in Austria. And it was a border town called Brunau. His father was a customs agent. So if any of you guys have ever traveled to Mexico or overseas, you come back through, you go through customs. You guys know what I'm talking about? Okay? And so his father worked for the government. Hitler claimed that he came from great poverty and became this great leader. Okay? He liked to exaggerate about his humble upbringing. Okay? Well, they were middle class, all right, which is boring, right? Middle class is boring, and it doesn't sound as good, all right? So his father had a pension and a government salary. So, I mean, they were middle class. Now, as a young man, Hitler struggled in school a little bit. He did have to repeat the 5th grade, okay? Transferred schools in his 9th grade year, and eventually dropped out of high school. He did like to read. He liked history. He was an artist, okay, and not a bad artist, okay. When he was 14, he drops out. When he's 16, his father dies, okay. They have a pension with the father, so Mom and little Adolf are doing okay. She took him to Vienna, which is the capital of Austria, just to the south of where he lived. He lived in the north of Austria. And went down to Vienna for a sightseeing tour and ended up going to the opera. Back here at the early part of the century, 1908, roughly there. Okay, what kind of music is there? Well, there's opera. There's classical music. We haven't gotten into the jazz age yet. So he's a big fan of Wagner, spelled Wagner. Some of you guys that play piano and stuff know who Wagner is, right? And he wants to go to school at the Vienna Art Academy, which is a very prestigious art academy. So he applies for this and fails the entrance exam 2 times. The second time, he tells his mother he gets accepted. So he moves to Vienna. He's not going to school. And then his mom's going to pass away a year later. Okay? So he will live off his father's pension. For the next 6 years, we're talking about 18 through 24 age here. For the next 6 years, he's going to live on the streets of Vienna. He's living in hostels. He's going from hostel to hostel. He's poor. He takes professionally made postcards and makes copies of them. He does it by hand and then sells them on the streets. Now, Vienna in this time period is a very cosmopolitan city. There's a lot of wealth. There's about 200,000 Jews living in Vienna at this time, and many are of the upper class. Okay, so while Hitler's living on the streets of Vienna, there is a strong undercurrent of anti-Semitism in the capital, Vienna. In fact, the mayor of Vienna at the time is a guy named Luger, and Luger is an anti-Semite. You guys know what anti-Semitism is. Just in case you don't, the Semites, Jews, you go back to the biblical term, it's an anti-Jewishness. Okay, a feeling of Jewishness. Now, what I want to teach you guys is a little bit about the history of anti-Semitism today. I want to teach you about the traditional anti-Semitism that we find dating back to the time of Moses, right? As the Jews were held in slavery by the Egyptians. Remember this? Of course. You've all seen the Ten Commandments, right? Tell me you've seen the Ten. Huh?
I've seen the rocks. Personally, that they're spread.
Oh. All right.
Ultimate top 10. I was actually going to go talk about them.
Oh, the Ten Commandments?
Right there. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the movie, The Ten Commandments.
Well, I've seen those. Watch it.
Have you guys seen the movie, The Ten Commandments?
Has anyone
Jack?
seen that? I've never even heard of it.
Oh my gosh. I grew up watching this as a kid. It comes on every Christmas. Yeah. Easter.
Oh, wait a second. Is it the one that's like always on TV?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I have seen that before.
It's in color. It's from the 60s, but it was one of the most magnificent productions that ever came out of Hollywood.
Oh, that's it.
Charlton Heston plays Moses. Okay, come on, guys. You have to see this movie. You need to show it to your children when you have children. Okay? Okay, so anyhow. Okay. I guess it's a generational thing. I know my daughter has seen it. I probably need to make sure my son has seen it. I'm going to force him to watch it. Okay. All right, so anyhow, that's a traditional anti-Semitism. What we're going to move to, guys, as we move into the mid to late 19th century is modern anti-Semitism. They're different. Okay? Now, when you look at European history, you guys remember studying the unification of Germany? Anybody remember what year that was when Germany became Germany? 1870. Okay? Same as Italy, the unification of Italy, where you're actually saying these are the borders of our nation. Here's our flag. This is our name. Okay? Now, some people in Austria speak German? Yeah, Hitler spoke German. Okay? Some people in Switzerland speak German. Yeah. Okay, there's German cantons in Switzerland. There's French cantons in Switzerland. Okay, so prior to unification of these countries in Europe, people gathered together based on common elements like language, religion, culture. Okay? But once you get unification, you enter this age of what? The N-word. With an ism. Nationalism. Okay? The different N-word. Okay? So, that changes things in 1870 when you get unification. Okay? Then you're going to get... Jackson? Okay. Anything you guys want to add or questions you have, okay, do ask or share. Okay? Now, so I want to get into that anti-Semitism. All right? So he's living on the streets, Hitler is, of Vienna. And there's this ideology that's kind of, okay, I don't like Jews. But then you've also got a different ideology that starts to realm around nationalism, okay? And what at the time, we have any German students in here? Okay.
German student.
Like taking German as a language, foreign language. I got some German in me too.
Okay, yeah, I just need to drop out of school.
Okay. Volkisch. Okay. The German term Volkisch, meaning folk. What it lends itself to is an ethnic, folk, nationalism. Okay, German peoples, Germanic peoples. Follow me? Are Jews, even though they may live in Germany or Austria, are they Volkish? They're not Germanic. They're different. Does that make sense to you now? Okay? So this is starting to be spread, this idea of Volkish nationalism, and then it's taken a little bit further to what's called Aryan supremacy. Okay, we're going to get to that. Okay, but the Jews do not fit with Volkish nationalism. Okay, and Hitler's reading about this. This is where, when you're 18 to 24, you're going to start forming your ideology a little bit stronger. Okay, the way you view the world. Okay, this is what Hitler's reading about and learning about on the streets of Vienna. Okay? Good? All right, now, so we're going to get into this idea of racial ideology. Okay? And so I'm going to give you the long version if that's okay. If this is interesting at all to you, I'll keep going in this direction. Okay, 1859. There's a very important book written that's going to change the world forever. Forever. No? Keep trying. What? No. Yeah.
Oh, what's the Communist Manifesto?
Nope. Good try though.
You already said
No.
What year was this written?
The Origin of Species by Darwin. 1859. Okay? Now, what was Darwin writing about? He was on the Galapagos Islands, correct? Okay, and he was looking at different species of animals, right? The animal kingdom. And he deduced from his research that there was an evolution of animals, that they changed over time. Yes? Now, so we take that, all right, this is 1859. Over the next 20 years, this begins to challenge what people have thought previously. Especially when you transpose Darwinism onto mankind. That changes everything. Right? Does this bother the church at all? Yeah. The church is going to have a problem with this. Okay? So, when you talk about the origin of species, there's going to be a book published not much later. But I'll get you the date on it. Okay, so just real quick with the origin of species, okay? Now, this is going to be used by social science. There's a guy named Wallace, okay, and they talk about natural selections, how species evolve over time. Now, at first, this wasn't humans. At first, they didn't say this humans did this, okay? But eventually, that's going to change, okay? And it becomes controversial. And in 1871, Darwin writes, "The Descent of Man." Can I erase this? This is annoying me. The Descent of Man. Okay? And he applies evolution to the human race in 1871. All right? Now, let's look at history. Certain races of men have dominated other races of men throughout history. Does that mean that those races of men that have dominated the others are stronger and the others are weaker? Meaning that one is superior, both physically and mentally, than other men. that some have evolved stronger than the others. This will become known as racial science or racism. Yes?
Why wouldn't everybody just start working?
You have a point. This is social Darwinism, racial science. Okay? Yeah, you have a point. So, the problem the Jews have, okay, so let me tell you, the traditional anti-Semitism is about religion. The Jews worshipped a different God in the beginning. Okay? And so the Egyptians saw them as, these people that worship this God, and they had other gods, right? They had other gods, the Egyptians, right? Plural. Okay? And then these worship the God of Abraham, these Jews, all right? And something's wrong with them, And then they killed Jesus. Then the Jews killed Jesus. And then you have the Roman Empire, right? And the Roman Empire, under Constantinople, becomes Christian. Right? So the Jews killed Christ, and they don't believe that Christ is the Messiah. What's wrong with that? Okay? So they're different. Right? The majority becomes Christian. The Jews stayed the Jews. And they were discriminated against, if you will, or persecuted because of their religion. After 1871, modern anti-Semitism, they're a different race. And when you get into things like nationalism and ethnic nationalism, the Jews don't belong in Germany. Does that make sense? Okay. So, go back to the Franco-Prussian War. Remember this? Study this? Did the Prussians dominate the French? Yeah. Okay? That adds into this whole thing. This superiority thing they got going on. Okay? So, this develops. Okay? This social Darwinism develops. And you have these scientists that are going to start developing this racial science and try and explain history with it. Because you can kind of try and explain history with this. Okay, think about the Europeans coming over to the New World. Or the Europeans colonizing in Southeast Asia. And Africa. India. The Anglo-Saxons. Okay. The natives. Here. All right, so you could use racial science to try and explain history. Okay. I want to say this. As Christians, okay, this violates everything we stand for as Christians. We are human beings. Okay? And we have a responsibility, Jesus taught us, to care for the poor, to take care of people, to love one another, to love your enemy. Yes? So this flies in the face of everything that we're taught as Christians. All right? Now, this is going to develop. There's another author, scientist, guy named Herbert Spencer. Okay? And he's going to run with this idea of the survival of the fittest for human beings. Okay? Some interesting arguments made here. If there are weaker people amongst us, why would we have social programs to care for the poor? If we want our nation to become strong and powerful, do we want the weak to survive and reproduce? Because what they are going to reproduce is more weak people. We want the healthy, the smart, the intelligent, the strong to reproduce, to make us stronger as a nation. So why help the poor? They're just going to keep surviving if you help them. This is what they're doing. This is what they're talking about. And what this leads to, guys, and we discussed this, I think, the other day, is eugenics. Okay? Now, just to be clear, Hitler doesn't come up with this stuff. Other people come up with this stuff, and Hitler buys it and adopts it. People in the United States were reading this stuff too. Woodrow Wilson was reading this stuff. Woodrow Wilson believed in a progressive government that would make a more perfect nation through social engineering. Okay? This isn't just Hitler, guys. These ideas are deduced from Darwin and placed upon society. And so in the United States, I think I told you guys this, didn't I? We were practicing eugenics. Forced castrations of the mentally ill, drug addicts, prostitutes, and so forth. Okay? Hitler praised American eugenics. Okay? To me, it's disgusting. Okay? As a Christian, to do this. Okay? And it could happen again. There's a really good movie out. I mean, it's been many years. And the dang title is escaping me at this second. I'd heard some religion teachers showed it. And I want to write it down as soon as I think of it so I don't forget it next time. It has Halle Berry in it. It's a futuristic movie. Gosh darn it. Halle Berry movies? No, I don't know if she's in this. Gattaca. Gattaca. How do I spell that? 2 T's? 2 A's?
Just sound it out.
I got it. So you watched this in biology? Huh? Okay, but there's a character in this movie that wants to be like a pilot, and they check your DNA at birth, right? And they assign you a profession at birth, basically. Yes? Guys, how far away are we from this? Because with DNA now, the way we're getting here, right? They can tell what diseases you're predisposed to get, your life expectancy, this sort of thing, your mental aptitude, these sorts of things. I hope so. Okay, here's the thing, guys. Look, some of you guys are really smart. Okay? Some of you guys are really good students. Okay? Some of you are both. I was neither. Okay, so I'm your prime candidate. Okay? Now, I have an issue. I don't think that everybody should go to college. I think that some people should go to college and some people shouldn't. But I think it's their choice. Okay? See, I would have never gone to college if it weren't for a sport, baseball, because it was my one love, and I'm still loving it. Okay? I'm still playing. I'm almost 50, and I'm still playing baseball every day. Okay? It's silly. I'm a child. Okay? I love the competition. I love it. Okay? I love the camaraderie. I love the brotherhood. That's who I am. But I would have never gone to college without it. Now, I have a problem with somebody telling a kid that struggles in high school that they shouldn't go to college because they struggle in high school. Okay? I've gotten a lot smarter and a lot better student after, I turned 20. Okay? But it just took me a while because a lot of it had to do with my background and who my parents were and what they emphasized and so forth. Okay? But I was able to do it, and I feel like I have a pretty good brain that I can wrap myself around some of these issues and teach them well to students and help students think and learn. So here's the thing, guys. If the government gets a hold of this information and we get into a depression situation, when people are hungry, when there's a lack of food, bad things can happen. When there's a war and a depression, governments will do this again. People in Venezuela right now are starving. In the last year, the average person in Venezuela has lost 24 pounds. Through social engineering. Trying to create a better government to make a more perfect nation, a more perfect economy through government control. Don't turn your DNA over to the government. Ever. If you can help. If they start trying to pass laws that say the government takes a sample of your DNA at birth, that's scary stuff, guys. Microchips. Putting those in people's skins. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if we just had a microchip in our hand? We could use it as our bank account, our ID. We could shop. We could just scan to get in a building, whatever. And it's all in here. You don't even have to carry anything. We can walk around naked. We can take care of all these problems. Illegal immigration, because they don't have a chip, we don't have to worry about. National ID, all in a chip. No. Fight it. It's in Revelation. I know. Jackson just rolled his eyes. Here comes that heathen again. Okay, that Protestant heathen. Here he goes. Okay. The mark of the beast is the microchip. You might have it. You might have it in your pets, but don't put it in your body. My cats are microchipped.
Wait, you have a cat?
2 Siamese cats. Manny and Max. No, I'm allergic to dogs. And you can't travel when you have dogs. And we like to travel. Cats are good. Well, just have the neighbor come over and feed them every now and then. Every couple of days. Dogs have to go out and poop.
Outdoor dogs. Yeah.
Oh, well. Yeah, I guess you could do that. Yeah. Anyhow. Guys, is this paranoia what I'm speaking here? Am I speaking paranoia? Guys, just don't turn over these decisions to the government. Okay? I'm serious. It's scary, and all it takes is that huge economic falter, and then things start to go south. You hand over more power to the government, and it gets scary from there. Okay, so this is what we can learn from history. I think it's and from science fiction, right? Yeah.
So then, if there was the microchip, what do you think? I guess I missed the problem.
Oh.
I'm not trying to argue.
No. It's just that. Have you seen 1984? Read 1984? Big Brother. Okay, he's always watching you. So if you give him the chip in your body, you give him your DNA. Okay, he's always watching you, Big Brother. Okay, so if the government says this is what we're going to do, and you disagree, Well, they know where to find you. Okay? And if we get rid of guns by then, okay, because we want to get rid of guns, so then you won't be able to fight the government because you will not be able to arm yourself. This is one of the first things Hitler did, was disarm the population.
Where does it actually do that quote? He says to conquer the first disarm.
You must disarm them. Yes. The Russians did the same thing. It's just that kind of right-wing paranoia that I have running through my DNA.
It's like they would know where you're at.
Huh? Yeah, they know where you're at all times. Yeah. They know what you're doing. They're always watching.
Don't you think they pretty much can already do that?
You're right. Jackson, I mean, especially with the PRISM thing that they have, scanning our emails, our Google searches and all that. It's scary stuff. It's in the name of security and to try and prevent terrorism and so forth. It's a great debate to have in this country. And, you know, I kind of come down along the lines with the libertarians on this, that, you know, butt out. I don't want you watching me. Okay?
It's really stopping a whole lot.
I imagine we've stopped a lot of terrorist acts. They just don't tell you about them because they don't want to give away their methods. I mean, after 9/11, banks around the world were sharing information with the U.S. government about transfers of money that were getting into countries where this terrorism was breeding, and the banks were sharing with the government. The New York Times found out about it and exposed it to the world. This is how we were tracking terrorists, was through following the money. Okay? Well, now the terrorists knew that that's what our method was, and the New York Times just exposed it. Okay? Now, do you want the government to get all your banking records from the banks? Well, the IRS kind of does that anyways, doesn't it? Now, they don't audit all of us, so you can cheat. Just don't get audited and get caught. Because then you can go to jail for that. That's Paul Manafort, who's indicted. The guy that was helping President Trump run for president. Right? Okay. So, Lauren's getting ready for lunch. Let me just kind of wrap this up a little bit. Arthur Gobineau, 1853-1854, writes an essay on the inequality of the human races. Says that the white race is in trouble because of interracial marriage. Diluted the greatness of the Aryan race. Now, that term Aryan dates back to ancient India, as does the swastika. Okay, both the term Aryan is a language that some Indians spoke, like from India. That spoke this language that was similar to European languages. Okay, and that's where the term Aryan comes from. And then the swastika dates back to ancient India as a symbol. You can draw the swastika two ways. I mean, draw multiple ways. This one facing east, which is the rising sun. This one facing west, which is the setting sun. And that was a symbol dating back to ancient India. That's the furthest they can trace this symbol back. So the swastika is not some mystical thing that Hitler came up with. Okay, it's been around long before Adolf Hitler. Okay.
You know why he chose that?
I don't. I don't know if it dates back kind of to the Aryan, connection with India and so forth. So. All right.